Today's lesson, we're going to talk about plot. Different parts of a plot, what plot is, and how some of the elements interact with each other. What is a plot? A plot describes the events that happens within the story, the structure of the story. Every good story will have three basic elements: a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, so maybe beginning, middle, and end is really easy to remember, and you're up for a challenge. Let's call the beginning the exposition. Let's call the middle of the story the climax. And then we'll call the end of the story the resolution. So we're just going to replace those words beginning, middle, and end with exposition, climax, and resolution. But how do we get from one to the other? You might have already noticed on our plot diagram, we have rising action and falling action. Not all action is created equal. To get from the beginning of your story to the turning point or the big event in the story, we call that rising action. The author starts to build suspense. Then, from the climax, the middle of the story, to the end of the story, we have that falling actions. The author starts tying up loose ends and answering some of your questions that you may have as you read. Let's take a look at some of the key terms here in building a plot. First, we have the exposition. This sets the story. We're going to find the setting here. We're going to be introduced to where the story takes place, when the story takes place, and who are the main characters in the story. Then as we read on, we're going to come to rising action. Here's where we see the conflict coming in. Every good story has some conflict, something that needs to be resolved, whether it's man versus self, man versus man, or man versus nature. All of that conflicts will lead to the climax. That's the turning point where a decision has been made or an action takes place that changes the entire story. Then we have the falling action. Those are the events that come after the conflict kind of boils up and needs to come to an end. We've been asking the question, can all conflicts be resolved? Well, here in the falling action of a story, we find out if the resolution can happen or not. And then finally, a resolution, a conclusion, how it all ends. Was the conflict solved? Do all of the characters find some kind of happy ending? Or maybe there's more to the story that needs to be written. But here we have 5 basic parts, 5 basic terms of a plot. Exposition, the setting, the rising action that contains the conflict, the climax, the turning point or decision point of the story, the falling action, and the resolution. Well, we've talked about the basic plot structure. Don't be fooled. Not all stories are created equal. Sometimes you're going to have rising action and falling action happening a couple of times within a story before it comes to a resolution. Does this look like something out of a math book? Well, it's not. This is a simple plot diagram of the Hunger Games. Here we have several different storylines happening. The orange line kind of takes into consideration the overall theme of, will Katniss survive the Hunger Games? This pink line kind of gives us the idea of how the plot is going to answer the question, will Katniss be able to protect her family? And then the blue line follows the storyline of, will Katniss love Peeta back? So within one story, there's actually 3 different storylines or essential questions going on here as you read. All of the rising action and falling action happens within different times of the story. This helps to keep the reader's interest and makes the story more exciting. So let's wrap things up. Did we answer our question, what is a plot? We sure did. A plot describes the structure of a story, but remember, not all plots are created equal, even though they have the same 5 basic parts. Can you identify the parts in the quiz below?